republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Yes, under new business, B, staff resignations, going to middle school, kindergarten, staff development, elementary school, and appointments, Randall Road custodian at Bath Valley Elementary School.
Moving on. Approval of the March 21st meeting. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Motion and second on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Passes. Public comment. This is the time that the board sets aside for anyone in the audience who would like to address an issue with the board. We do ask you to give us your name and the town you live in, and we would like you to keep it kind of generic because maybe the person that you intend to speak on has not been made aware of an issue. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Hearing none, let's move on. Reading of communications. I believe we have any administrative.
We have the administration in your packet.
Superintendent?
Okay. A couple things real quick. First of all, we have Andrew Dowdy from Coleman. He's a senior in the firefighting program at Tri-County. He received a gold medal and will be going to the Nationals in Atlanta, Georgia in June, so that's quite an accomplishment. For him, we also had 3 people recognized by the Women's Club for an art contest. Senior Sophia Israel got first place. Sophomore Danica Migliore second place, and junior City King got an honorable mention for the Women's Club art contest. We do have about 4 or 5 applicants for the food service director position. We'll be trying to get those interviews after break and see if we can get any more interest in that. I did do some reflections on your evaluations, and it really kind of, for me, it boils down to communication, which is pretty much key in all our organizations. You know, the goal is always to get the information out in a timely manner to the people who need to know and in a format that they would prefer. And sometimes we don't know which format they're going to prefer. Sometimes we don't have a one-size-fits-all communication things. There's certain things that I communicate to you guys as the board, and there's certain things that happen in the district that I can't control, but also get communicated. But you know, it's definitely a constant thing that I focus on. We also have to remember that some of the information that we deal with is protected in a lot of ways because it deals with staff and students. And like I said, I can't predict all those decisions that those people will make, but we'll try to do the best we can as we go along. And again, even if we do have conversations and people come out of meetings or people come out of situations, they could continue to have a different interpretation of what happened, and people aren't always going to be excited with the outcomes necessarily. We do the best we possibly can. And we really, right now, are struggling again, as you all know, to get this conversation to start with a person who is at the lowest level, and not lowest level in terms of their rank, but the person who can definitely deal with the situation at all possible. If you have people that are jumping right to me without having a conversation with a teacher, without a principal, without a director, and you know, I can come back and get the information because I am the superintendent, but as far as efficiency goes, it really needs to be directed back down to the lowest level. But you know, I do try to listen, and I try to redirect it as quick as I possibly can. But it's not as efficient as I think people think it will be. And again, communication, it will just be something that I'll always work on. But I did look at your evaluation and reflected upon that, and continue to do so. Again, I enjoy working with all the committees. We've got a lot going on in this district. It's quite amazing after we've been here for a while, what the committees do, and the value that we put into those conversations that we have with the committees, and then they come back here at the board level, and you have a tremendous number of decisions to make, as do all of us during the day. But so I did reflect, and will continue to reflect on your feedback.
Thank you. As far as board communications, I just want to echo what Mike said, that we have some pretty strong board members here, and I'm sure that all of you can and will approach whoever you need to in a timely manner. But if there is ever anything that you find that is not being heard, absolutely drop me a line or give me a call, and we will go from there. Moving on to reports. And board, I do not have a report, so we will move on to reports of special committees and the budget.
I think Mr. Hammer's going to take it from tonight. We have had 3 meetings, a lot of work's gotten done, a lot of really good constructive work. We've received some good news. All in all, this is the point we've landed on, so I will let him fill you in.
Yeah, I would scan those meeting date updates that what has happened, but up until last night, we rolled the whole thing up into kind of the last review for the budget committee. And at this point in time, in this part of the year, what we do is we try to give this whole board as much information as we possibly can. And last year, what we did, what I want you to think about why I'm going over this real quick, is that we scheduled a Monday evening meeting with the budget committee so that you could ask questions and go through that. Last, I don't want to add any more meetings than necessary, but I think last year when we came together, it was primarily the budget committee, and they'd kind of already heard it, so it was kind of it wasn't fruitful for them. So I guess what I'm saying is if we don't want to do that Monday meeting, what Joe and I will do is a little bit more deeper update into the budget. But, Robin can pull you on that. But basically, what we got down to last night was removing some large maintenance items, removing some bus transportation that we didn't get approved for buses. We had a great reduction in health insurance. If you remember, if you've been reading through the notes, we put in about an 8% increase in insurance, and we finally got that down to about 2%, which is wonderful. So it gave us a savings of $163,000. We did reduce some special ed out-of-district placements, ed tech, some maintenance on some fencing, and also some professional credits. There is some things that we put into our balance forward. There's a large driveway piece over at Somerset that we still are dealing with the driveway at EDS. And there's a tractor and snow blower here at the middle school, high school. We want to take out of fund balance, projector here at the high school, and some things that were one-time purchases that we'd still like to get in the budget, but not take out of next year's budget, but still get them done. We do have a pretty good reserve going into capital reserve still to build that up. We're going to keep the fuel reserve. We're not going to add into that, but basically, these numbers are really pretty good. There's a couple towns that are almost going to see a reduction from last year, but it's basically a 1.22 increase to the towns after we're all said and done. So the budget committee, has been at this every Monday. Joe and I will, depending on how you want us to give you the more deeper picture of that, and you can see. I don't want the towns to see these numbers basically because you guys haven't seen them as a board, but the budget committee has seen them. So we're very close to being able to pass it out to you and get that information to the town. So I guess it's what's your pleasure as far as how you want us to communicate this all together the night that you get it, or you come the night before and hear the whole story.
So if you would let me know by raising your hand if you want an extra meeting the night before the budget meeting, board meeting.
In May, or the night before the one in May.
Right.
Do you know the date of that meeting?
Um,
It's Monday.
the board meeting would be May 9th,
Yeah.
so it would be the 8th.
Sorry.
May 8th.
So is there anyone around the table that wants to meet May 8th?
That would be a time to ask
Yes.
additional questions,
There would
have
be, it would be
discussion.
more involved. There will be a longer presentation at the budget, at the board meeting the night after, but if you had questions and, you know, wanted more detailed answers, Monday night would be the night to appear.
I guess, what is the recommendation of the people on the budget committee? Is they feel one way or another? Because they're knee-deep in this, so I'd like to hear.
I would personally, again, not for adding meetings at all, but to have the opportunity to really go through all the information that we have been going through the last 3 months, that Monday meeting is really useful, right? And then we all come together as the board the next night, and with all the information, all your questions, hopefully at that point have either been answered or triggered new ones, but still, you know, as much information about the biggest topic we're bringing back to our towns, the one that hits them the most. I can't encourage enough information being shared on this.
So I guess I would say I would come if you had it, but I don't want to, you don't have to have it just for me.
All right, so out of 19, we've got 2 people that
I
are
would-
willing to
I-
meet.
I do.
Four.
Yeah.
Can we just take a show of hands who would be interested in having that Monday meeting?
The 8th.
Because, yeah, if can the budget skip out, like Mike and Joe are so good at this.
Well,
Um,
I've seen 8 or 9 hands, so I would say that we will meet that Monday night.
Thank you very much.
So we'll
I
send a
appreciate
note
that.
out to just remind everybody, but we will have a meeting on that Monday.
Okay.
That will be a workshop, not a...
Right, it's a workshop, it's our Monday budget workshop, so.
Anything else on the budget?
Excuse me, I would say that we are waiting, the only piece, we've got it all rolled up, and we're waiting for Tri-County's number to come down, but we've kind of hopefully put in enough money to do that, but that should be down any minute, so we'll definitely should have that by then, but
What's the time and location?
5:30 over at.
Superintendent's office.
5:30.
Okay, moving along. Building had no meeting, but I believe we'll be addressing something under new business,
And we meet tomorrow night.
and the meeting tomorrow night. Education.
Yep, with 2 things. First, just to recognize all the students who have been doing such a great job with the vocal and instrumental performances that they're doing both in district and out of district. You can see in Ms. Netto's update, there is recognition of that. They did really well. The show choir did really well up at in Millinocket at the State Vocal Jazz Festival. I was able to go up there. I know Alyssa was able to as well. Some other folks might have as well. And just want to thank all of our choir teachers and Mr. and Mrs. Neal, Mr. Cloutier, everybody that just works so hard with those students. It really brings out a lot in the students, and they performed really well. And then also, there was mention at the, and Miss Jordan, sorry, I didn't say Miss Jordan. There was mention at the meeting of, again, you can see in Mrs. Netto's report, there's a very long list of students who have a lot of academic achievement, including full boat scholarships to colleges because of their academic success at competitions around the state, including three folks who have received four-year scholarships to the colleges of their choice. And then it goes down from there to includes individual scholarships as well as recognition for even freshmen, all classes. So I think this speaks really volumes to how hard the students are working, and that they're being recognized all around the state is really fantastic. And then the other thing, we spent the bulk of our time at the committee meeting listening and hearing from the administrative team about the curriculum work that's been happening over the last decade plus, and Mrs. Merrill and Mrs. Merrill are going to actually give you a condensed version of that because they'll do a better job than I will.
Good evening, everyone. Lori and I am kind of taking the principal angle on this presentation. I don't know if I got the long straw or the short straw. When we did at the Ed Committee, Casey Gillenbart was sharing some of the curriculum work with Lori, joined us, and Gene Hager from Great Schools Partnership. So anybody feel free to jump in too if I missed something. And I really appreciate the Ed Committee's attention. It was a pretty full presentation, but it had some great conversation and questions. But we thought it was important to kind of give a snapshot of kind of the progress. You know, I've been in the district a long time, and like I have to say, my time here, there have always been, at least from my experience at high school, some teachers doing some really great things, like really cool things. But I had a little bit of an aha moment when I shifted from assistant principal to principal, and I had a couple of questions asked me about curriculum. I had an Army recruiter ask me, like, do you have a lab biology syllabus? And I just moved into the office that summer, and the dusty binders were on the shelf, and they were dusty. And I pulled them out, and I not only found one, but found 4 lab biology syllabuses, and it was one for each teacher who was teaching lab biology. And when I started looking at them, they were radically different. And that was like, Houston, we've got a problem. And we started a journey of that conversation at the high school of getting alignment. And then shortly after, I had a conversation with a really highly regarded, successful, longtime English teacher. They were asking me about something at their grade level. They were at grade 11 at the time. And I said, well, what are the sophomores doing? And their response was, well, I don't know. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? And again, another light bulb that we were not having that kind of internal conversation and coordination to really look at what was that experience for a high school student, like what were our expectations, and really stepping back to look at that big picture. What do we want students to know and be able to do? And it shouldn't matter which kind of collection of teachers students have throughout. There should be some commonality in the academic experience and the academic expectations. And so some of this work really started hard at the high school, and I have to give credit to like one of our former curriculum coordinators, Ginny Secor, was really ahead of her time, and some of the work she was having us do, and it was, like, I'll be honest, like, it's uncomfortable work sometimes. It's pushing people to think and work differently. So we started on this journey of getting clarity about what we were doing, what we were asking students to know and be able to do, who was doing what, at what grade level, what were expectations in each content area. And then that conversation began to filter throughout the district and some natural things. I know, for many years on this board, particularly at the middle level, there were lots of concerns about the different things that were happening at the different middle schools, different things happening at the elementary school. Again, all good things happening in pockets, but there were just so many differences that we've begun this journey to really get clarity about it. And it's been a ton of work. But you can see, like, we're not all at the same exact place. This is a constant work in progress, as it should be. This curriculum should not be something that's in a dusty binder on a shelf. It should be a living, breathing kind of body of work that we refer to, that we continue to refine and improve and clarify. And that's sort of this journey. And I think at the core of it, I know how important it is to the board and listening to a lot of your conversations about policies. There is a wonderful cadre of policies around curriculum this district has. And I've looked, many times at all of these. And I know last year the board spent a lot of time on controversial issues. But some of those top policies on instructional goals and curriculum development, like, I would encourage you all to go back and look at them when you get a few minutes. They're really thoughtful policies that I think are ahead of their time in some respects, and like, I appreciate kind of that vision out of the policies that our district has. But we do use those, and we can share any of these materials out if people want it after the fact. Just to speak of it, we use a model called backwards design. It's called understanding by design, and it really starts where what we don't want teachers to doing is just kind of day by day cobbling together something. Because when you do that, you never know where you're going to end up. We want to think big picture first, and then how do we scaffold and build that plan from that big picture down to that day-to-day. So those day-to-day activities and lessons are building towards a common goal. And we need that clarity, whether it's grade to grade, content to content, so that we can have some coordination. So it's not a situation where, well, in grade 2 they did dinosaurs, in grade 3 they did dinosaurs. One of the things we found out, as Angela kind of marshaled together all those middle school staff, and they got on the same page, and then when we all got in the same building, we started having conversations and gallery walks, and, we noticed there was way too much U.S. history happening. It wasn't balanced, so these conversations and the work has been very fruitful. Little kind of pitfalls with backwards designs, and the activity orientation really speaks to me, because in my time at Nokomis, like I recall, and some of you, a lot of you are alumni, maybe recall like those moments you did a really cool activity or project in a class. But the fallback was that it wasn't ever really hitched to any larger learning, or one cool activity had no connection to the next. So the next thing, and we needed to do better with that. And then the other piece, and I don't think we have any former social studies teachers in here right now, and I love social studies teachers, but the kind of stereotypical social studies teacher was stuck in covering a time period. In U.S. history, we're going to go from colonization to present day. We're going to do ancient history and cover 2,000 years. We have to do that in 1 year. And that's really, obviously we want to look at, what the content is and make sure we're covering important topics and information, but it's not about just getting to X point. It's really, the focus is on the student learning. What is it we want students to know and be able to do? We do want cool projects, but we want them to be hitched to an important learning target. Okay, I'm going to apologize for my flow chart. I did take a lot of colored arrows off too, like this is the decluttered version, but I think it's important to see that we view this work as all hands need to be at the table. There are some districts, and I talked to some, all across New England in the last few years. There are some big districts where they buy curriculum. They go to these big textbook companies and they purchase curriculum. I really appreciate that that's not been the path this district has chosen, because I think you lose that power of the knowledge and expertise of your teaching staff and the ability to be responsive about what our community, the voice our community has and what's relevant for our students. And so all teachers are involved in this, instructional coaches, administrators, directors, the superintendent, and the board has a voice too. The education committee has a voice, and those policies really set the tone for us. So this is like a full team approach on curriculum. How do we make this work happen? In lots of different ways. When we have early release days, workshop days, we utilize that time. Sometimes we're able to use PLC meetings. I know that the elementary school has really taken a plus of COVID. They've taken advantage of everybody's new comfort with joining virtual meetings, because they are geographically spread. I know in the middle and high school, it's been awesome to be able to have some vertical opportunities of grades 5 through 12 for everybody to get together. There's a couple pictures of last spring, a really cool gallery walk we did from grades 5 through 12 on the curriculum, so people could get a sense of the work and make connections. There's also a lot of individual work. Our teachers put a lot of off-the-clock time. Curriculum work's not fast work. If it's done well, it takes time. People have really put on a lot of great work. We have a lot of samples. I'm not going to talk a lot about this slide. These are all the steps that go into making good curriculums. You can just see by the size of the slices, there's a lot of discrete pieces that we look at. But that bigger circle where it just says reflect and refine, we're engaged in this process. So if you ever ask me, is the curriculum done, I'm always going to say no. Because we're always in this process of reflecting and refining. Yes, refining or refining, whatever one we need to do. So I can get to Lori.
So, a real good question is, where do the standards come from? So the Maine Department of Education maintains standards for each content area, pre-K through 12. And for us, that is the Maine learning results. The standards are aligned with the Common Core state standards and other national standards like the Next Generation Science standards. So those are embedded in the Maine learning results. the science standards are in addition to that. And when we talk about aligning curriculum, we revisit that often as well. So does the DOE revisit their standards and indicators as well. And the purpose for us revisiting that and it being as cyclical as it is we determine what's really working, what can stay the same, and what are we really aligning well to what the main learning results are asking us to teach. What needs to stop? Are we holding on to some activities that we really like that don't align? So we look at that. And what do we need to improve on? Because we always need to improve. So that is continued work that, back to what Mary said, is in all of those different groups that we work in. When we're looking at developing curriculum, we start with the broad. What are the big takeaways? What are the big things that we want students to take away and be, lifelong skills? The graduation standards, that link will take you right to the district website that has all of the graduation standards that you can see by grade span. And then next it goes to performance indicators, and those get down to what is it we want the student to be able to know and do under that graduation standard. And then the last part that's very specific is the daily learning targets, and that is today, what the student is going to leave knowing and being able to do. And those are posted for the students. And at the end of a lesson, the goal is for students to say, this is what I learned and this is now what I know and I'm able to do. So from broad to specific. And then, quickly. So this is a unit plan design. So when we work together to develop these, we have the title of the unit, the grade and the course, the length, how long is it going to be? Is it going to be, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 lessons? A summary, and that just summarizes what the students are going to know when they're done with that unit. And then we have the essential questions, and that's the broader question. And then the key understandings, what we want students, again, to know in that content area. And then we break it right down to the no's and the do's, essential content vocabulary and essential academic vocabulary. The second stage of our unit planning is the evidence, which is how we assess that, the summative assessment. In the teaching, there's formative assessment that's done every day, so teachers see how they're working towards meeting that summative at the end.
Yeah, a little bit with summatives, like a big shift. So if we have 6 sections of Algebra 2 and 2 or 3 teachers teaching Algebra 2, or if there's a grade 2 ELA or grade 7 math assessment, all the teachers teaching the same grade level or course content are going to use the same summative assessment. So, some of us all remember back in our days of high school, you want Mrs. Merrill because, she's going to give you the easy one. And don't take Miss Nettles' class because she's like a psycho and uses this crazy assessment and it's stuff she never even taught. Like, we're trying to eliminate that there's no I gotcha surprise. Like, very transparent. This is what we want you to know how to do. This is what we're going to teach you how to do. And this is how we're going to assess you. And that's what we want to see, is no gimmick, I gotcha to it.
And the other benefit to that is it gives teachers an opportunity to get together and bring student work and look at it, because the student work is really tells us what are we doing well as teachers, what do we need to change, and where do we need to push them and push ourselves. And then the final stage is those daily learning targets I talked about. That's the specific performances each day that align to that lesson. And that really helps teachers stay on course, to make sure that that's really what they're working on with students, and that we don't get off into the weeds that, take away that valuable time that really aren't aligned to what the main learning results are asking us to do.
I think just like some little things, like, we talked about that. Like, it's really about uncovering meaning, and that's what we really want students to dig into. And I remember the conversations from the controversial issue. And kind of what's at the heart of that policy is at the heart of what we try to do in every course, every content. It's not about the adult in the room just telling facts to students. It's really supporting them, for them to make those larger connections and to make meaning with it. That's really higher level learning. Like asking students to just repeat dates, numbers, names, that's very low level of learning. We want it to be authentic and try different modes and, that they're actually doing things, not just sitting, listening to somebody talk at them. A good lecture is still a good instructional strategy. I'm not proposing that should never be used, but we definitely want people physically engaged in the work, and that students are doing the lifting and teachers are there more supporting and coaching instead of that person just telling them everything to do. And sometimes you'll hear complaints, I know we get this, well, the teacher wouldn't help me. That's not the case. Sometimes what the teacher is doing is letting that student engage in the struggle, because sometimes we're quick to just tell them how to do it or show them how to do it or help them do it. And that is a short-term fix, but it doesn't create good long-term learning. In that unit plan, this is an annotated one, like all the red you can't read from your seats. If anyone would like a copy of this, it really digs into and is a wonderful tool, particularly when we bring new teachers on, to kind of teach them this process, because it is intense. Lastly, in our instructional strategies, that's part of it. There are specific strategies that research assigns, like a number 2 of the level of impact strategy, that this is a good strategy. And so we, in our PD moments, support teachers in learning about that. It's part of our evaluation process to help teachers understand these strategies better. Internal documentation, which I know this has come up a lot at the board, at each band level, by that I mean high school, middle school, elementary, we have very similar approaches, but they're a little bit different. That's so we can meet the needs of each level, and they're organized by the units, the content areas. So at elementary, you're more likely to see it organized by kind of content grade level, and then at the high school level, or the curriculum steering committee has a series of folders. And this is really important that we're able to store work digitally. This is a massive body of work. I mentioned those dusty binders. Back in the day, it used to be problematic because the classroom teacher would build a curriculum and do a lot of work, and it would be in a physical binder that they might have the only copy, and they decide to leave and take that with them, which legally you could push because it's our intellectual property, because we're paying them to do it, but nobody went down that road, and so you just lose that work. We don't have that problem anymore. At the same time, we are cautious about what we are just putting on full view to make sure there's some document security. We had some internal problems with people looking at other grade levels, or maybe as this work is progressing at different levels, people just wanting to grab something, or they're going to a different grade level thinking, oh, I think this one's cooler, I'm going to take this one, and that was kind of wrecking our scope and sequence. So we do put a little bit more controls on who can access what on the public website. Definitely all our standards and indicators are out there. It's a ton of work because as you click, all these links are hot links that usually lead to other hot links. And as we refine and reflect, teachers are constantly updating, and then we got to go back and make sure it's current leaks. So there is a ton of work that not only goes into building it, implementing it, but the maintenance and security of it is a lot of work. I think just some challenges, and I bet all of you say this about your workplaces too, time. We all know time is super challenging. There is limited PD time built in our calendar, and I know, when you all talk about the calendar, and I'll make my pitch, it is very important for us, obviously, to spend quality time with students, but it's also very important that we have time to collaborate as professionals throughout the years as part of our jobs. So we do that, but time, I think time's always a challenge. Staff, You know, and I know Mike's talked about this, we know as a rural district, there's probably gonna be a little bit higher level of turnover. And so when we have that turnover, it gives us ebbs and flows with this work. You know, and I think about, you know, some of our longtime teachers who've been a, 30 to 40-year teacher, they retire. And we might like the budget side of hiring a 1 or 2, first or second year teacher, but there's no way like a first year teacher is going to come in with the knowledge and experience that somebody's that's been doing this for 2 or 3 decades. And so that takes that time to kind of build, get people assimilated into our system and teach them. I touched on the documentation, and then stay current. Like we know it's, I remember at the beginning of my career, 35 years ago was when they first started talking about the rate that data is doubling up. And I want to say back then it was like every 5 or 10 years, and I was like, wow, really? And now it's like every 5 or 10 hours, the volume of just information that's out there, the technological advances, the discoveries, it's constantly, we have to keep a pulse on that. And so, I nerd out about curriculum, I love it, but it's a huge piece of work, and I also think it's the heart of what we do as educators. And I, want to impress on you how important we do take it. Like we take this very seriously. I know these principals do. The sweat, blood, and tears I see teachers putting into really developing and refining. It's really some great work that's happening, but it's not finished, and it'll never be finished.
Mary, thank you very much, and Laura, any questions for the two?
I have a question. So if there's 4 teachers all in the same subject, are they able to make amendments to what they're teaching the students based off the education standards? I mean, do they kind of put their own spin on it, and what is our take on some of those spins?
That, what the ideal balance we want to strike is we never, I don't ever think it's a good situation to say there's this lockstep curriculum and on day 32, I'm going to come in and you better be doing day 32. You want to balance that consistency and continuity with teacher skill and innovation. We don't want to stifle creativity and innovation. But if there are 4 teachers teaching something, and let's say it's the 4 of you right here, and Dave has this blockbuster unit that he's getting great results on, Dave needs to talk to the rest of you 3 about what's going well and working, or maybe, Angela's in a new master's program and she's learned something new about literacy and learned this new strategy. She needs to bring that to the group, and then we have that, the departments, have that conversation. What we really don't want to have, and the term I've used at Ello's, I don't want any Lone Rangers anymore, that you're just kind of going off on your own, doing whatever the heck you want. If it's that fantastic, then bring it to the table, and let's see how this fits in with our standards and indicators. Is it possible, somebody on any given day is field testing something? Yeah, of course. I mean, none of us want anybody teaching something that is really not within that scope or sequence of the content area, but it's a balance of, we want creativity and innovation, but it needs to be collaborative. It just can't be, you're just doing whatever the heck you want.
And just to follow up, is there any time that we would take a state standard but remove it out of our personal curriculum? So maybe it's a touchy subject, because I know that's come up in the past, that maybe we don't go into full detail or full depth on.
Yeah.
So how do we handle stuff like that?
Most of the standards are really pretty broad. They don't get into a discrete lesson or a discrete topic, and so I think there's some room, for discussion. I think this group has seen with 19 board members, you all bring very different perspectives, values, things you prioritize or don't prioritize. And as a public school, I think in one of those policies, it talks about that as a public school, we've got to give that opportunity of learning to happen and know that there might be topics which some people object to, which is why we have an objection, a policy that people can say, hey, this is a content that, I prefer my child not learn at school, and there's a procedure to go about that to get an equitable topic. I mean, I think that issue probably comes up more at the high school level. In the areas it's come up with, most common will be in biology and health class. I probably over 14 years of being principal, I maybe have had 2 requests, but it's a policy that's there, and we're happy to work with individual people that are like, I don't want my kid learning that. There's some parents I know have said for the whole class, like, I want to opt to homeschool my child for this, graduation requirement. And we try to work with, meet people where they're at and figure out what we can do to make it work.
Thank you.
Paul?
I'm looking at the minutes from the meeting. Curriculum presentation, Jean Hager, from the Great Schools Partnership. How do they dovetail into our curriculum needs and so forth? And what kind of stuff gets discussed through the Great Schools Partnership with respect to curriculum?
They really serve as process coaches. They're not selling us a product or selling us a content. More where they help us if we go back to the unit template. I think we probably got this template from them and help us develop a common language to use with staff. So when we talk about a standard, and prior to this work, if we asked teachers what a standard was, we probably would have got as many different responses. And so to help us develop that common language, so when we talk about a standard, we know the difference between a standard, performance indicator, learning target. Might give us some feedback on some of the assessments to say, it's not a strong question, or this isn't a higher level learning question. And we've worked with them for a long time, Paul, and where that relation started was back when we dropped NEASC and just thought that was a process that was not beneficial to us. We knew that we needed to be careful to not just say internally we have all the answers and to get some outside perspective and support. They've been a really great partner for us, and I think one of the things I've appreciated is they come to work with us. They're not coming here to tell us what to do. They're prompting us, helping us tease out what we want to do from ourselves.
And they're also very supportive with any professional development we might notice. If we notice an area where we have a weakness, they're really great at supporting us with that PD, and they bring a wealth of information from New England, which is nice when you have a partnership with somebody who brings in so much knowledge from the schools around us, whether in Maine or in New England.
I chaired the meeting. It was really cool. I'd gone to it's called School Redesign and Action Conference that they held in New England. It was a few years ago. There were 2,000 people at the conference. And the whole opening, not a subsection, in the whole opening, in the first 2 minutes, I looked up on the screen and I honestly almost started crying, and I didn't know they were going to use it, but it was Ellen Payne's Algebra 1 unit plan that they were showcasing to the whole group as really an exemplar. And they have used a lot of our work with other schools to kind of say, this is an example of some great work. You might say, well, who cares, share, but sometimes when we're looking for those teachers and people are talking about the good work we're doing, most teachers get nerded out too about curriculum. That's why they went into teaching. They want to teach. And I feel like a lot of schools don't do this. They look to take a shortcut. And the work this district has done it really is a legacy, I believe, for the district moving forward, because it's taken this long. I naively thought in my first year as principal it was something we'd get done in that year. And my thinking's changed, because everybody said I thought it would get done. And, my thinking's evolved, and my knowledge has evolved.
And there's no primary resource that can give a teacher everything that they need to teach. We utilize primary resources support this work, but a big part of this is teachers looking at, so what out of that resource fits that standard and those indicators, and how are we going to supplement, and what are some other great resources that we can use to really make sure that we're covering what we need to do.
And so what about the little schools? The
I-
elementary schools?
I think they speak on it, we're all using, like, some of the things I talked about, we're all using it, like K to 12. Everyone's using this unit template plan. I would say the high school's a little further in the development because we've been digging on it longer, but everybody is on the same train, and I think the middle school is probably shown the most kind of charge, growth, and that's because they got to get under the same roof, and I'm still mad about COVID happening, because that did throw a wrench in it, but and I don't know if Alyssa and Jenny mind sharing what they shared at the committee meeting, because Mark asked a great question about, is all this work been worth it? And I said, yes, that is what I think about at 2 a.m. And anecdotally, I believe it has, but then when Jenny and Alyssa shared their comments, which I don't know if you guys mind doing it again, I think that's the proof in the pudding.
Sure, so I shared that my oldest daughter started in the district 12 years ago, and so she's a senior this year. And when she started, there was 4 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and then the high school, and everything was different. If she was in one middle school, or the one elementary school ended up closing and she went to the other one, it was just different. And as she got to high school, yes, there was COVID, but she struggled. She struggled because kids in her class had already learned something, so that teacher expected them to know that, but she hadn't learned it, so that part was off, so she was struggling. My youngest daughter, 4 years behind her, started here in 5th grade when the middle schools combined, and they had started in her 4th grade year the work of trying to get them all on the same page, so that when they got to this building, they were all kind of on the same page. And that work between those buildings made a huge difference, because in the classes through the middle school, it didn't matter if they were from the Newport Elementary or the Etna Elementary, they were kind of all on the same page because that's where they started. I feel like her going into her freshman year, she's going to be much more successful and prepared because they're all on that same page and level. So I don't know if there's a way to say that grade-wise or testing-wise it was working, but just seeing it in my own kids and the difference in their classmates, I think that it's working. And it's, for me as a parent, much better because I complained all the time about it being different. So to see that it's much closer now, it is, I think it'll be much better. And it was a lot of work. And the teachers were doing good things. It was just different. And I was always like, why do they have foreign language at one school and my kid can't get it here? She's doing math. It was always a struggle.
Yeah, and I kind of piggybacked off Jenny's comments. My kids are 4 years apart as well. My oldest graduated last year, and my youngest started his freshman year this year. And just the transition period between 8th grade and freshman year, between the two of them, my oldest had a little bit of a struggle getting into Nokomis and getting into the flow of things. And my youngest has been pretty seamless, and they both have done great, but just that transition from him being in the same, my youngest being in the same school as the high school, starting at the middle school in 6th grade, it was very seamless for him to move over to the high school versus when my oldest did it. So I think it shows just in those scenarios that it is working, it's making a huge difference.
And to speak just a little further about the elementary schools, so before we consolidated, they even had different report cards. We have, in the time that we've consolidated, even through COVID, we use the same, they all have the same report card now. We spent a whole year of meeting once a month as an entire elementary group to go over each trimester what their learning should look like to keep them on track for that end-of-year standard that would be expected in the state standards. We meet monthly to do curriculum development, and now they're developing integrated units, which is a great way to teach. It's more authentic. And then they're able to embed more science and social studies because it's a part of maybe their literacy, their reading unit, their writing unit. And it was really great. We met last night, and we break out into grade levels, and then we have different facilitators that break out with the different groups. And they were really excited to say, wow, we've got this integrated unit done, and we know our counterparts working on a different, it's an integrated science unit. So one was weather, one was push and pull. This is the kindergarten level. So they said, the next time we want to all get together and share what we've developed and talk about when during the year we would teach this. So again, they're all on the same page. So a lot of really collective growth in moving in the same direction for all of the elementary schools.
Mary,
Go ahead.
Thanks. I was wondering, at the elementary level, I cannot remember how many times we revamped those report cards, but it's a lot of information that you have on there. But then at the high school level, you just see like formative, summative, and their scores. How do you guys create that? I heard you say, like if it's science, it's the same throughout the board, across the board. How do you create, or who decides, I guess? Do you just decide as a team as far as what percentage is going to be? I noticed per class
75
it's
and
very,
25.
Yeah, so.
That's school-wide. It's the grades, 75% of the grade is the summative average for the term, and 25 is formative.
But do you decide, like, by content area, how much of that, like, some of them might have like 2 summatives, some might only have 1.
Depends on the size of the units, and also, for the most part, in math and science, there are a ridiculous number of indicators. In English and social studies, it's much fewer, and they're cyclical, like you can kind of keep revisiting them, and so kids have more times throughout a year in those humanities courses because they're much fewer, whereas in math and science, it's kind of a one and done because there's so many different ones that they have to keep moving through it. So there's, I would say, that break between those, and so they're trying to plan a pace, and sometimes it's a length of units, like in a content, like there are some units that could be 3 weeks long, or they could be 6 or 8 weeks long. Like for a unit, like in a semester, you're probably only going to have 3 to 4, maybe 5 summatives. Like, there's just not going to be that many in a, you get an 18-week semester. So if you think about it that way, like how many units you really think you're going to get into if you're going to get into something in depth.
Well, it would be consistent though, like one science class wouldn't have 4 summatives.
If they
and
were
one would have
both
2.
the same course, like if they were both like physical science, yes, they should be the same. Now, it might break towards the end of the semester if they're or end of a quarter. If they're 2 1/4, one teacher doesn't quite get the same distance, like they need a week or 2, like that summative might go into the next quarter. But they should get through the same, but it's not necessarily the same between like chemistry and biology. They might not have the same number. And I think there's an element to that we speak about pacing. Like I learned that's my first year teaching. I had 2 class periods in a row, and I thought, well, this would be perfect. Like we lockstep, and quickly found out how different groups of students could be. And I think what we try to plan is like, what are the must-have units, and can they be first, and then towards the end of the year, there'd be a nice-to-have unit. And so if you have to spend more time, I think those are really tough calls because we know what we want to get through, but if you need to spend more time reteaching, and that's definitely been problematic through COVID, trying to read, for teachers trying to assess, what learning loss happened, that's really hampering them if they have to go back and reteach to make sure everybody fills that. So there are some judgment calls that need to be made, I would say, at every period and throughout the school year. And I think those are messages, like when I meet with the leadership team, that, your check-ins, like, you know, where are we at, how are we doing? Like, particularly through COVID, I'm like, listen, it's just not gonna be the same, like, reminding them, like, this is not gonna be the same, like, make adjustments in January, so we're not left short, like, if we realize we can't get to something, that the critical things we've been able to get through, and, you know, any nice to have, so I think that's the beauty of having everybody involved at the table versus handing somebody a piece of paper or a binder to say, teach this. Like, they are really engrossed in this work and know what they're doing inside and out, so they can make those decisions. And I think that saved us through COVID because we weren't just winging it day to day pre-COVID. We could really thoughtfully think about, okay, what is the most important thing or things, and how do we scope that out? And even on a like non-pandemic situation, we still have to do that kind of thinking. And I know that they do that at all grade levels. That's what they talk about in the grade level meetings, the PLCs. It's not an exact science, and I would never try to pitch this like, we have this beautiful document and everything goes swimmingly all the time. Like, it does a lot of the time, but sometimes it gets messy. Like, the work is messy.
I want to go back to Great Schools Partnership. What would you say this Jean Hager's specialty is, what she showed us in health this presentation? Is it straight up curriculum?
I would say her facilitation skills, Paul. She's really expert at facilitating a group of people to focus on the work agenda. She comes with rock solid agendas, really keeps that flow going, so it just doesn't degrade into squirrel moments inside conversations. She's been doing it a long time, so I think she has a lot of like exposure to what other schools are doing, what's worked for them, what's not worked for them. So I feel like she's sort of, I don't know what that game show was, like, you know, phone a friend.
I call those people like a steering wheel, keeping the car on the trail.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it kind of is.
She's
And
been at
it's
the
nice.
education committee several times. And
Yeah, it's
very
nice
good.
for like us as administrators, where we often have to be the facilitator. It's nice when we don't have to be the facilitator and we can be a participant in the work. Like, it's a different mindset. So, like, I think that's a benefit.
So how are we tied in with the Great Schools Partnership? Do we pay a membership fee? Or?
Yeah, it's like a contract, like the high school contract we pay for with grant money. It's like, you know, I charge a contract for a number of days. Like, it might, you know, it could be 10 days, 20 days. And that can be work that they're doing on-site, where they come in, are physically meeting, where they're doing PD presentations, like the last early release. They brought in 3 or 4 people to do sessions, like one was on formative, one was on instructional strategies that staff brought in. It could be off-campus time where we're saying, or organize some of our curriculum documents, where they're doing some of that document cleaning up, not changing anything, but making sure links work, that it's in an attractive template that's presentable to people, that looks sharp and looks, you know, professional.
Thank you very much.
I want to cut to the chase. Hold on, Robin. So I don't know if any school board members have been watching the emails and stuff, and the offering to Great Schools Partnership pushes across. For some reason, I can't contribute to the, you know, the emails that you guys all get. I read them. They all come through, but I can't. It just doesn't go to my email correctly or something. But if you take a look at Great Schools Partnership, it seems like they have certain people for this, certain people for that, certain people for that. They put the equity narrative hard, hot, and heavy. Equity, grading for equity, building buildings for equity. I urge each and every school board to click on that thing and see what the offerings are for their workshops and, you know, wanting people to come and whatever, learn about this angle or that angle. They push the equity narrative hard, hot, and heavy. It seems like they've got a handful of people that set aside for that topic. This type of stuff, useful. When you start to get into that left turn, they ought to have their own steering wheel. Get out of that left turn, help people curriculum straight up, don't get into the weeds with equity and all that stuff. The grading for equity tells me that you dumb down, possibly could say, well, let's dumb down our grading narrative to get to the lower ranking students for whatever reason. I mean, take a look. When you see Great Schools Partnership on it, click on it and see what their workshops are. Vast many of them are equity-based, equity this, equity that. You've heard me say equity is a socialist word, and we need to stay clear of it as far as we can. And we're paying money to a group that's pushing some sort of political narrative with it.
Thank you, Bob. Ryan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Not for education.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to policy.
So, policy committee met, and we took a look at the public participation at board meeting policy and the bullying policy, and there were updates from the Maine School Management Association. And at the next meeting, we're going to take another look at these two policies with those updates incorporated into our existing policies. We also, at Ryan's inspiration, took a look at or discussed taking the opportunity with the opening of the school nutrition director position to re-envision that position. And so we have, I believe, for first reading, is that what we're doing? A updated version of the school nutrition director. And I'll leave it for Ryan to flesh out some more of his inspiration, but to sum it up, I think the idea is to hire someone who has the abilities to move the school nutrition program in the direction of more nutritious food made from scratch.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. First, just want to appreciate the policy committee being flexible. This is kind of an opportunity that doesn't come along very often when you have someone who's been in the district for a very long time retire. They've obviously been doing things a certain way to try to be successful. So what I kind of do this work professionally, work with school nutrition programs all around the country. So what I did was basically took a look at some of them that I feel are the most successful, and I kind of define that as you're not allowed to be profitable. It's a nonprofit by law, but those that are not operating in the red continually, which is pretty rare all across the country. Until recently in Maine and California, they passed universal meals. So a lot of districts are now operating in positive, which means that they can reinvest. But what you need to know basically about school nutrition is that the vast majority of your revenue comes from participation. So the more kids you have eating your meal, the more revenue you get from the federal government, which is where most of the reimbursement comes from. So the districts that are most successful are the ones that have higher participation rates across their entire district. So we found out during the budget committee meeting that our participation rate this year is about 50%, which is fairly low. It could be a lot higher. So I look around at other districts where they have much higher participation rates, and the common thread with all of them is that just like any restaurant, you want your customers to be attracted to come in and choose that option. So most of the districts where they have successful, meaning operating in the positive programs, are based on as high a participation rate as possible, and the ones that are most successful have a big focus on a couple of different things. One is going after every grant opportunity that there is, and there are a number of them out there for school nutrition. And the other one is to make the food as palatable and positive, desirable as it can be, so that kids and their parents want that food as opposed to spending extra money and sending their kids with a meal. So basically, this job description comes from other examples of districts around the state that have gone this way. And the idea is to basically take the guesswork out of hiring someone. I would say that the most successful districts are successful because of the leadership. So it's whoever is in the school nutrition director role has this mindset, and this job description is basically trying to attract that person.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the school nutrition director job description.
Maybe second.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any discussion? Right.
I think this is here for first read, right? So it would have to come back again, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Motion on the floor to be approved it for first reading.
First reading. Yeah.
Correct.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
I have just one question. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to read down through this. So this role would be responsible for grant writing?
Yes and no. So essentially, like I said, the best way to be successful is to go after as many grants as possible and to increase your participation. So again, the most successful dining services directors are, there's one I took a lot of the job description example from. He says most of his job is rubbing 2 nickels to get 11 cents. So that's what he means, is there are lots of foundations, there's lots of opportunities from DOE, from USDA to take advantage of commodity prices and order ahead and things like that. And so someone who has that mindset is really what we're going for. So the responsibility to write grants might be doled out to someone under this person, but the idea would be that they go for them, whether it's them writing it or not. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but yes, go after the grants.
Yeah, I just wondered if that might be part of the job description. I just was trying to read through it quickly and I didn't see anything of that nature.
David?
In the past, when I was on the board, I recall we were trying to get the school lunch price reduced by a dime. And as it turns out, the federal government actually set a minimum pricing for the school lunch program. And if we dropped it by the 10 cents at that time, we were going to no longer be eligible for the free lunch program reimbursement or the reduced lunch pricing from the federal government because we dropped our lunch price. So there's been things that have changed a long time. So.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of putting this on for first reading? Opposed? First reading. Anything else from policy?
I don't think so.
Good. Transportation, there was no meeting. Negotiations? Tri-county?
Yeah, I reported on some of the happenings, like I told you, about our students going to the Skills USA. And we also went through the budget very quickly. They are, like I said, not to a point where they passed it on to us, but that's about all we discussed during that meeting.
Any questions from moving on? Renaming committee.
Tomorrow night.
Extracurricular, we talked, we had a presentation from the middle school AD about volleyball. We tried volleyball this year for girls grade 8 and it was very successful. And so they would like to continue with that, not only girls but also boys. And also wrestling is a club sport and they would like to have that be a permanent, regular, because it goes under the name Nokomis. And without it being a full sport, we don't have much say in it. And so they thought that it really needed to come under our wing. So we, as a committee, decided that it would go to budget and then come and visit the board. Sue?
How many participants?
I'm sorry? For girls, there were 18 girls in just the 8th grade alone that came up for volleyball. And with the boys, there was 20, it was not official for boys, but they felt that they would easily have the 18, if not more. When the boys would come out and watch the girls play volleyball, and I guess most of the gym was filled with boys that were interested in volleyball.
No. About the rest. You know how many? Roughly. Do you know how many kids would roughly wrestle? Just
there was a lot this year.
Yeah.
Say 25, 30.
So what exactly is the difference when it's a club sport? Where do the funds come from?
They raise their own fundraising and whatever.
Almost like some of the rec. I mean,
Yeah.
the town isn't kicking it, obviously.
Yes, roughly, but it's called homes. So, yes, so it's hybrid.
So they don't have really control over it. It ran very well, but the people that are running it have decided that they've done it for years and maybe it's time for them to share the wealth. And the middle school felt that they were ready to pick it up. Anything else? Moving on, there's no old business, moving on to the snow plowing contract.
So we had this come up at last thing, we didn't have enough transparency. So hopefully all of you have this. You'll notice that for EDS, we only had one contract. The selection that we listed is in yellow. And so so Mark Erskine was the one that we recommended get the EDS contract. On Nokomis and SVS, the building committee put those two together, and you'll notice that Whitney Family Fuels has come out as the lowest bid on that. On Somerset, we're recommending to Dodden Property. We used Wheeler last year.
He was a subcontractor.
He was a subcontractor, and we had some difficulty with meeting performance objectives. So those were the numbers that we have. This is what our recommendation is to go with Katahdin Property for Somerset, Whitney Family Fuels for Nokomis and Sebasticook, Mark Erskine for EDS. That's a motion.
That's a motion. Do we hear a second? We have a second. There's a motion, and a second on the floor to accept these. Any discussion on the motion? Veronica?
Do we have preferences? I'm just thinking of the distance from Dover to Heartland. Are there references of clients if there's an area that we're looking into?
Yeah, one of the things that Alicia requires is not only references but also equipment lists. One of the things that we've made a point of looking at this cycle was to make sure that they had reserve equipment, so that if one piece went down, they would be able to still fill the contract. So, and all of these have pretty good references.
Thank you.
Paul?
I'm looking at the Nokomis column now. We did take the lowest bidder of the bunch, albeit for $600, but what's the thought process on that, even though it's just $600?
Like I said,
$216.
we combined the two properties here because what we've done in the past is pass them out to different contractors, and we found that the two contractors would work basically in opposition to each other in the border space between the two properties. So we have tried to give the contract to one person who can have a site plan for the whole facility.
Are we gonna, this is 3 years, right?
It's 3 years.
So forever and ever, we're gonna put them together now without the discrepancy? $637.
Right, but if you look at the column beside it of where it's going, the SBES, that original bid is substantially lower. I mean, it's a couple $1,000s, so that 600 really isn't making a huge impact. It's still $1,400 less.
Right, but I understand that, Jess, but there's still the impression that we didn't take the low bidder because we split them out. If we wanted to put them together, which makes perfect sense to me, they're right there. And yeah, you're piling my snow, and I can understand that.
Right.
But next time, we need to put them together and get them together. So, I mean, if I'm this person, even though it's $600, I'm gonna be knocking on those. Why didn't I get the comments? I was a little better. I've proven I got all the equipment.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it was the previous cycle, we tried to do that, and most of the people bidding asked if they could break the properties out. So,
That's exactly what
David?
she said.
Just a quick correction on this table, I don't know if it matters, the contractor, in the middle of the year, if you look across Cotad Property Services, it says 24, 25, 25, should be 24, 25, 26. Right next to the 58.5 for Cotad Property Services under the year column.
Oh, one.
Just a typo, I think.
Yep.
That's just, I'll make sure it's correct.
It is now, thank you very much. Anything else?
So for the Wheelers earthwork, we've had them in the past, and the work was so subpar that we won't consider them again, even though they're
I think they didn't
considered.
provide a,
They didn't provide, forgive me, they didn't provide the equipment list and they didn't provide references, from my understanding. The references did not return information to, and they were a subcontractor, they were not asking anything.
so they were doing the work, I think, for, I don't remember who it was. They were basically filling the contract for somebody else. And then they didn't meet all of our bid standards on this.
One quick thing, monthly payment is for everybody except for Whitney. Is there, you gonna give them a check at the beginning of the year? How come there's no column filled in there? What is the pay schedule gonna be?
24, 25, 26, and I'll put them to the last two.
Fine. One might assume you're gonna give it to him at the beginning of the year, and he's going to grant thereafter.
Why would we do that? I think,
I don't know why.
I don't know why she didn't like that.
It's just a
We'll make sure.
We'll make sure it's up.
All right. Move on. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Okay. Next, staff resignations.
Skylar Ganger for SDS, SBE, Caleb Jarrett, special ed teacher, basketball elementary school, Richie Stevens, literacy specialist, home staff. Bill Freudenberger, science teacher, elementary zone high. John Panic, custodian at Spasswick Valley Elementary School, Tina Leonard, literacy specialist at Holmes Regional Middle School. I think I have two more. Rest probably. And Mackenzie Fitzwood, kindergarten, Spasswick Valley Elementary School. Again, I can tell you some of them are retiring, some of them are going to Portland because it's closer to where their significant other is. Somebody has to move closer to their father, who's not well. So there's a variety of reasons why these people are retiring, and tongue-in-cheek, so you'll probably see Mr. Freudenberger's name.
Right, how many years Freudenberger?
He's
had
top of the
district?
list. He's making the top three very nervous.
Would you go to?
I'm not gonna lie, when I saw his name, I was
Yeah, don't get too,
Yeah.
Don't be too sad for a second. All right, and so no action needed.
40th year. He said, 12 years ago, I set a goal of retirement after 40 years of teaching. He submitted this letter with a great deal of satisfaction, knowing my goal was not achieved. But, you know, like I said, you'll see. Don't get too sad.
Okay. Nominations, none. Staff appointments.
Randall Rowe is a custodian staff at elementary school.
And staff transfers.
Yes, we had 2 transfers when the class, Courtney Cole is going to go to kindergarten, from kindergarten to teacher literacy specialist, and I think we saw a resignation in that position last month, and then Kim Flanders will be able to go to grade 1 in kindergarten. She's been teaching first, what grade?
She taught kindergarten last year, first grade this year, she's going back to kindergarten.
Future agenda items.
May I ask a question? Sorry. The literacy teacher at EBS, are we replacing or adding?
The other person was...
Sheila's retired.
She retired.
Sheila retired.
Okay, thank you.
And then so Courtney's left.
Okay.
Future agenda items. Paul?
Couple of things. We had, very briefly, I think it was Dave, touched base on security in the school by the way of, don't let me put words in your mouth, Dave, but potentially arming teachers, classroom teachers, or whomever. Is that something we should, I'd say we should start working towards that, see what's out there, how it needs to happen, and whatnot. That stuff isn't going away, as we know. And it would have been way worse if the last one we heard about, they didn't jump in there quickly and execute what they were supposed to do. And good guys with a gun stop further carnage. And if a teacher was willing, if there was a good person with a gun to stop it, it would be, well, it would be a good part of our security envelope or whatever. So I don't know where you head to try to get to that point, but I think we should start looking at it. And one more future agenda item. I don't know, probably policy committee or whatever. We should stop waiting for certain things to happen and have a policy to address it before it actually comes. And that would be a biological male participating in a female-only sport in this district, all the way up to high school, junior high, wherever the sports.
Very good. Anything else? If not, our next meeting was... Yep.
I can speak legislature-wise on the one you talked about with the guns. That was proposed, but right now it's still in committee. And I would say that you'd have to talk to your representative about that because there's some unintended, some other things that go on.
If I can speak to that, I would recommend that if people are interested in that, contact your state senator or state representative. It is being thrown out in committee right now, and that's where it's at. Until that law changes on the state level, as a district, we can't do anything. Our hands are tied by the state and the legislature currently. So if that can get passed, great. We can move forward with the rest of it.
I bet that was going through. Is that because we are a gun-free zone?
Until they change that part of the law, that's not, you can't make it that as far as from the school board.
Well, you can have a resource officer here because the law enforcement